It's the
Mhm.
judge who makes the final decision. And guess what? If the CPS recommends something or tells you something like, "Hey, we're not going to place the child with your father," that becomes the
Mhm.
golden rule, the rule of your case, unless you.
And our next caller is going to be from Leslie in California. Hello, Leslie.
Hello?
Leslie, hi, how are you?
Hi, good, and yourself?
I'm good, thank you for asking. Do you have a story to tell or questions to ask?
I have actually a few questions. My
Great.
first question is, well, my parental rights were terminated last week for my youngest child. I have 2 cases, and they were terminated for one of my children. And but I completed my case plan, and they still terminated my rights. Within that time, I did relapse a few times because it was about, substance abuse. But now they're using COVID against me because I didn't bond with my children. And so, is there anything I could do about that? Even though I completed my case plan, and they still terminated my rights.
They're terminating your rights because you didn't bond with your kids?
Yes.
And what proof do they have of that? Did they give you visits?
Yeah, I did have visits, but they're using COVID because there was a time that I only saw my son twice a month. And since he's 2 years old, they're using that against me.
Well,
and I'm sure you had the video calls, so that was probably hard to build a relationship on there with a
Exactly.
2-year-old.
Leslie, let me ask you this. Before they terminated your rights, did you and your attorney file a 388 petition?
Yes, I even myself filed several, and they were all denied. I even tried. My father tried to request one so the kid could be placed with him, but they denied it.
Did you guys file 388s with the assistance of your attorney, or did you try to do this by yourself?
Both.
Okay. So this is what I suggest you do. You talk to your attorney, and you make sure that you file a notice of appeal on the termination of your parental rights and on the denials of all of the 388s that were filed. So, for example, if you filed some 388s, you should, or your attorney, you should be appealing those. And if your father filed one, he should be probably appealing that. But you want to speak to your attorney about that. And here's what: are your children with non-family foster parents?
Yes, they are. They're in an adoptive home already.
Okay, so I tell people this all the time. Don't wait till the termination of the parent's parental rights comes up as an issue to try to get the children with a relative, a friendly relative.
I've been trying to get my kids placed with my dad since the beginning, but they deny it. Why? They don't even give my dad a reason why.
Okay, when you say they, who are you referring to?
Well, it's them as in CPS.
Okay, so here's my golden rule. I say this to all the time. If CPS makes a decision about your case that you don't like, you know what you're supposed to do? You're supposed to file a motion or a request to the judge, because the CPS only makes recommendations. It's the judge who makes the final decision. And guess what? If the CPS recommends something or tells you something like, "Hey, we're not going to place the child with your father," that becomes the golden rule, the rule of your case, unless you go talk to the judge. You got to get it in front of the judge. And with these kids that are placed in foster homes, and you have, 20 relatives who could take the child, or friends, they don't even have to be relatives. They can just be friends or relatives who live anywhere in the world. Okay, world, not just your county. All right, you need to make these motions in front of the judge as soon
Yes.
as possible.
Okay. But even though for one of my kids it was already terminated, my rights were already terminated last week.
Right. But I'm telling you and the listeners to do this early, not wait until your rights are terminated.
Mhm.
Okay?
So
Now,
what can I do about it now?
file the appeals that I just mentioned about it. Your father should
Okay.
probably file an appeal as well.
Okay.
Okay? But you got to come, it's easier for you and your father to win on this issue if you come forward early
Yes.
and often and don't wait
I
until.
I I had that case open for about 2 years, but I was the person that, okay, no, they're not bad persons, or oh no, they see that I'm doing this, or they see I'm doing that, and I know now. I know it's not. I barely figured that out late.
Okay, right. But I tell people this all the time.
Mhm.
From the very first moment they place your children with strangers, you should be requesting the judge, not CPS, to place your
Mhm.
children with
The
relatives
relative.
or friends. It could be a friend, and they can live anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world.
Um. Also, does being undocumented has anything to do with it?
No, the answer is no. Nothing.
Okay,
As a matter of fact, I think
because
the law
I
specifically says you can be, undocumented.
because I tried to get my children placed with paternal side family, but since they're undocumented, they say that they can't do that.
Who told you that? Was it in writing?
CPS
Was it in writing?
and my social workers, and basically we were just going based off their word.
Was it in writing?
No, it was not.
The reason why I ask you if it's in writing because your relatives who were denied may have a big fat lawsuit against CPS for telling you that. Being undocumented is not a reason to not get children placed with you.
They even told the dad, because he's undocumented.
Hmm.
My children's dad, they told, or CPS or my social workers told him that he's not able to have the children because he's undocumented.
Well, he has a big fat lawsuit, and if he wants to call me, I'd be happy to talk to him about it. 888-888-6582.
Triple eight, okay,
888-888-6582.
6582. Okay.
And I'm not going to
Okay.
mention the county that you're in,
Uh-huh.
but from your phone number, I've heard other people tell me that that county discriminates against undocumented people for the placement of
Mhm.
children. And I'm here to tell you, with no equivocalness, if you're
Mhm.
undocumented, that does not keep you from getting your child, and it does not keep you from getting a relative child. Period. End of story.
Mhm.
Okay, that just happens to be the law in California as I understand it. Now, if they were
Okay.
telling you this stuff, and or telling the father this, or telling the father's relatives, um, there's possibly a great lawsuit, and if it's in writing, oh my God.
It's even better.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Hey, Leslie, I want to thank you for calling and thank you for listening. Call us back in 3 or 4 weeks and let our listeners know an update on what's going on. And for God's sake, don't forget to file those notices of appeal. Hey, Cynthia,
Yes, I am here.
in your show, have you heard people talk about they can't get their children or they relatives can't get their children because they're undocumented?
That is the first time I heard that, and I was kind of excited to hear the answer about that, and surprised, to be honest. I
Uh,
didn't know about that law.
yeah. I actually had, in that county that I think she's from, and this was several years ago, I actually had a prosecuting attorney, county counsel, argue to the judge that my client's parents, who came up from another country, weren't, how did she put it? They weren't citizens, so they couldn't get the kids. And the judge just stopped and just kind of stared at the prosecuting attorney like, did you really just say that? Did you really just say that on the record in open court?
Right.
And, the argument went on. And the interesting thing, the judge decided, instead of placing the kids with the undocumented relatives um, who had entered the country legally, uh, she decided to return the children to my client, the parent.
Hmm.
And I didn't even go to court to try to get the kids placed with my client. I went to court to try to get the kids placed with the grandparents who were here legally, right? But they weren't American citizens. And the judge ended up giving the children back to my client, um, who happened to be, in recovery and, had a full-time job and everything and was trying to do her best. Anyway,
Wow.
we got to take another break. This is The Secret, How to Fight Child Protective Services and Win. I'm attorney Vince Davis with Cynthia Becker, and we'll be right back with more calls, more stories, more questions after these messages.
As a